Chapter 1: The Drowned Temple. The swamp had always been a wall along the coast. Since the first colonial journals, men had cursed it as a place that could not be crossed. It was no firm shore but a vast floodplain of reeds and black water, where the river broke into countless channels and drowned the land for miles. To move north or south, travelers were forced inland, where the ground was surer, or else trusted themselves to the river itself. Maps showed the region as blank space, marked only impassable ground. Settlers bypassed it, armies marched around it, merchants sent their goods upriver and down again. Generations learned to skirt the place rather than cross it. Even in the age of steel and steam, the swamp remained a hindrance. Coastal rail lines bent inland to avoid it. Roads detoured more than 100 miles before rejoining the shore. What should have been a half-day's journey could take 3, with all the expense that delay carried. The swamp was not wilderness alone, it was a choke point, a hand gripping the throat of commerce. The new highway was meant to change that. Engineers promised that a raised roadbed laid across corduroy foundations and bolstered by embankments would at last stitch the seaboard together. A journey that now lost days to detours could be done in hours. Merchants hailed it as a boon to trade, landowners dreamed of new development, and politicians spoke of it as a triumph of modern industry over unconquered nature. The surveyors went in with axes and saws, compasses and chains. They expected mud, snakes, and misery. They did not expect stone. At the end of their survey line, where axes rang against a stand of thick cypress, they broke into a clearing and stopped dead. Pale columns rose from a drowned pedestal. The swamp lapped the first several steps, the water dark with centuries of silt. Past greatness is immediately recognizable, the mark of a civilization where none should have been. The discovery shocked the nation. Newspapers printed sketches, taverns and trains filled with arguments. Scholars at the University of Ashford, backed by the Department of Antiquities, filled lecture halls with debate. Some pointed to the Haldane, famous for their civil organization and stoneworks. Most argued it was Kaelite workmanship, though no one could explain what such masonry was doing so far north of their known range. Politicians declared it proof of the continent's grandeur. Ordinary men marveled that something so vast could have lain hidden in the swamp all these centuries. Within weeks, the university's vanguard, funded jointly by the department and Ashford, had raised a base camp on the driest ground the swamp would permit. Rows of canvas, crates under tarps, a dynamo coughing under its fly. From camp, a plank-laid path cut to the ruin, rope lines strung along its length, lamps glowing amber through the mist. Scaffolding rose among the columns, pine lattices lashed with rope, narrow walkways built so scholars could examine high capitals and fragments of roof without touching the stone. The site was secured. Preliminary work began. It was then that Dr. Nathaniel Harrow arrived. "Our task is preliminary," Harrow was saying, his pencil tapping against the page. "You will measure every span, copy every inscription, and disturb nothing until excavation is authorized. If a stone lies out of place, you mark it. You do not move it. Speculation belongs in your notes, not in your hands." The notebook lay open before him on the canvas table. A sketch filled the page. The ruin's exterior, columns rising from a drowned pedestal, carved capitals above, fragments of roof, vines overgrowing the whole of it. The outline was crude but powerful, a mystery only half revealed. Harrow studied it a moment longer, then closed the book with a snap. From the back of the tent came a murmur. "Best leave kings to their graves." Another voice. "The rebirther weighs heavily on trespass." A third muttered of swamp spirits that took the form of faceless men. The talk spread until Harrow's voice cut across it, hard and clipped like an officer on parade. "Enough! Your faith is your own, but superstition has no place in the work we do. If you wish to pray, pray, but do it in silence. Out here we measure, record, and nothing more." The muttering died. The only sound was the cough of the dynamo outside. "Form up," Harrow said, slipping the notebook into his satchel. The revolver at his hip caught the lamplight as he rose. The path to the ruin had been hacked by the vanguard, a plank-laid causeway through mire, rope lines strung waist-high, lamps hissing overhead. Boots creaked on timber, rifles shifted on shoulders. Now predator talk filled the air. A Sicilian muttered about snakes thick as barrels. An Amirian swore he'd seen bear tracks the size of dinner plates. Another Commonwealth worker kept fingering the breech of his rifle, muttering about wolves pacing in the mist. "Predators, yes," Harrow said evenly. "The swamp has teeth, but so do we. Keep your rifles loaded, keep your eyes ahead, stay sharp, don't waste powder. It's beasts we may meet, not phantoms." That, at least, silenced them. Harrow strode at the front of the line, his broad-brimmed hat pulled low, revolver on one hip, notebook on the other. The leather of his boots was mud-scored but polished where he'd wiped them clean, as if he were as much officer as scholar, which is precisely who he was. He carried himself like a man who had commanded before, straight-backed, shoulders square, every movement precise. Veterans of the Continental War still walked that way, even when they swapped their rifles and sabers for pins and shovels. The mustache bristling over his mouth gave him away as a Commonwealth cavalryman. The quick eyes behind his spectacles missed little. He could have been mistaken for a rancher, an officer, or an adventurer, depending on the light. In truth, he was all three, tempered by scholarship. He looked equally the man to trade blows in a tavern brawl or to stand before a hall of academics with sheaves of careful notes. The mist pressed close beyond the glow of the lamps, and in it the swamp whispered. Reeds bending, water rippling, unseen things sliding through black water. The clearing opened. The ruin loomed. The pedestal rose from the flood, its lower steps drowned, its upper dry. Columns soared in broken ranks, capitals tangled with vine, moss streaking their pale shafts. Scaffolding lattices wound around them, pine and rope holding lamps aloft. Inside, more walkways climbed the walls, giving access to high inscriptions and the fractured remnants of roof beams without needing to disturb the ruins. The men hesitated at the water's edge. Harrow pressed forward. He waded the first flooded steps, climbed the timber ramp the vanguard had lashed in place, and passed beneath the fractured lintel. The air inside was heavy, humid, alive with moss and stone dust. Roots hung from ceiling cracks like ropes. Ferns thrust between paving stones. Lamps dangled from scaffolds above, painting the hall in unnatural amber and shadow. Harrow's eye fell immediately to the colossal figure at the far end, but he did not dwell on it yet. He forced himself to note the whole, broad, vast, ceremonial. No hearths, no side chambers, no traces of habitation. The paving was unmarred by the wear of life. This was a hall built for reverence, not for living. "No dwelling, no court," he said aloud. "A hall of veneration, then, a temple, or perhaps a tomb. In the legacy of the Caelite god-kings, the two were often the same." Only then did he advance toward the dais. The figure sat enthroned, shoulders squared, posture regal, hands resting on the arms of its massive throne. The face was blurred by erosion, but the bearing endured. A man of great power, perhaps a Caelite god. The stone garment fell in stately folds, faint roundels clung like the memory of jewels or brooches. The throne itself bore scars where laurel work or insignia had once been fixed, long since stripped away. By looters, nature or both could not be said, at least not yet. "A god, perhaps," Harrow murmured, notebook in hand. "If not a god, then a king. And in such halls, the difference was often none." Above the dais, an inscription ran, characters softened but still legible, carved in disciplined rows. Uprights, crossbars, bowls, familiar yet wrong. Harrow sketched several into his book. "A script of some sort," he muttered, "lost to us now, yet curiously akin to the letter forms found in Europa's deepest antiquities, those rare inscriptions seen only in sacred contexts. The cadence suggests a prayer." He wrote in his margin, "Legible but indecipherable. Archaic European habit, unfamiliar hand." north of all accepted K-Light range. Work began in earnest. Chalk snapped against stone as grid squares spread across the floor. Tape lines hissed, tripods clattered open. The box camera clicked, plate after plate soaking the hall in grainy silence. Draftsmen pressed rubbings to the frieze, paper whispering as the eroded letters gave up their shadows. "Note tide marks," Harrow ordered. 3 seasons at least. Elevations of the south wall, no embellishment. This is a record, not art. The lamps hummed. Condensation beaded on their glass. For a moment, a shadow passed across the enthroned figure's brow, and it seemed almost to breathe. Boots splashed outside. A runner appeared, chest heaving, coat spattered. He thrust an envelope toward Harrow. "The university, sir." Harrow opened the telegram and read by the work lights, "Report at once. Stop. Recall ordered. Stop. Inland discovery of exceptional significance. Stop. Site. Scale surpassing coastal ruin. Stop. Depart promptly. Stop." He folded it, slid it into his coat, and stood a moment in thought. Then, in his old officer's voice, "Complete the rubbings. Finish the south wall. We return to camp before sunset. Marquez, your tide lines are steady. Crane, keep your hand dull and precise. We do not make art, we make records." Harrow's voice carried above the dynamo as the men gathered in the evening. "You've all done solid work," he said. "We have enough to begin a proper account. Tomorrow you finish the south wall." He drew the telegram from his coat. "I have my own orders. The university recalls me. Another site, inland, greater in scale, requires my inspection. I leave at first light." A murmur rippled. Disappointment, relief, surprise. "The work here continues," Harrow said, iron in his tone. "This temple will not vanish in the night. Others will come. Our task was to mark it, and we have done so. That is enough for me. Others will see to the proper excavation." He tipped his hat. "Eat. Rest. At dawn, I ride." The cook fire burned low that night. Lamps buzzed in the mist. The men ate beans and pork from tin plates, rifles stacked within reach. Conversation drifted, half jokes, mutters of drowned kings, the rebirther's name spoken low. Some swore it was a tomb, that the figure was a god-king casting judgment on all who set eyes upon him. Others claimed it was a temple where the god's name had once been sung. Harrow ate in silence, the glow of the fire catching on his revolver and the corner of his notebook. When laughter rose briefly, he allowed himself a small smile. He had no quarrel with faith, but superstition, he thought, was a swamp thicker than any reed bed. Later, he retired to his tent. The notebook lay beside the telegram, the enthroned figure staring up in pencil lines and shadow. At sunrise, he saddled his horse. The plank road stretched back to the surveyor's road, and from there to the rail. He glanced once more toward the swamp. Behind the scaffolding and lamps, the faceless god still sat enthroned, inscriptions whispering their mute cadence into the mist. Harrow touched 2 fingers to his hat, turned his horse, and rode for civilization.